Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Secret Society. As today, I'm kicking off my new series about a huge hoax that took the music industry by storm from the late 70s and had a tragic end right at the turn of the century. Now, the story I'm getting into today is that of famed French and German duo from Munich, Germany, Milli Vanilli. Now, you probably either know them for two things: their hit songs Girl You Know It's True and Blame It on the Rain, or unfortunately, their demise, live on MTV. Rob and Fab of Milli Vanilli were promised millions in fame, all while they had to keep up a secret they didn't even know they were signing on to keep. That would one day, unfortunately, be the Achilles heel of their career. Now, before I get into this, there is going to be a secret password hidden in this video, so be sure to find that and comment it below, and I might just follow you. Now, let's get this clear. Milli Vanilli were industry plants from the ground up. It all started when the DJ crew Newmarks were working on their follow-up to their 1987 hit Rhymes So Deaf. Working with local musician Bill Petaway, they would work on a track that would end up being titled Girl You Know It's True. The song majorly resembled the DNA of Rhymes So Deaf, but didn't get the same amount of airplay in the United States. It really only hit off in Germany. Now, Bill Petaway was a starving artist who worked at the local gas station to make ends meet, but the same couldn't be said for Milli Vanilli founder Frank Farian. He had the most cutting-edge equipment for the era, and nothing but time to make a souped-up version of the song he had heard in his home country of Germany, Girl You Know It's True. By the time he finished copying the song, it was a huge, booming masterpiece, and it just needed vocals. He would start with the Rocco twins' vocals, a set of American twin sisters who were already accomplished in the music scene. Frank had the twins listen to the song by Newmarks first so they would know exactly what to sing. So how did we get to the end version of Girl You Know It's True that we know today? Well, Frank would bring in Charles Shaw to perform the rap verse and Brad Harrell to sing the main chorus. That's right, so Milli Vanilli are not even singing on this song. As Frank Farian was producing the rest of the song, he knew he had a worldwide smash hit. But as he looked at who sang on the song, he didn't feel as though the people who actually sang the song had the right image or look. Thus, Frank Farian would make a choice that would explode the song, but also ruin the people's lives attached to it. He would enlist the help of a modeling and talent agency to search for actors to front the project. Now, what about the original singers, the Rocco twins, Charles Shaw and Brad Harrell? Frank Farian, the mastermind behind Milli Vanilli, kept them completely in the dark while he was on his search. Brad Harrell was in his mid-40s when he recorded Girl You Know It's True, and he had already had his big break as a session singer and touring musician. Brad had no objections to a different person fronting his project, so girl, he's literally Maya Marie, he doesn't care. However, the same couldn't be said for Charles Shaw. He was only 28 and was attempting to break into the music industry in any way he could. Now, remember this, because I'm going to be coming back to it. It's very important. Now, in 1988, a fated meeting would occur between a French musician and model named Fab Morgan and a German singer and model named Rob Pilatus. According to an article from the 1989 Los Angeles Times, Pilatus was anxious to do something in show business but had no real focus. Experimenting, he did some work as a DJ, dabbled in modeling, but worked hard enough at breakdancing to become a champion. He earned an invitation to an international breakdancing competition in New York in 1984. During a side trip to Los Angeles, he met Morvan, who was here for a dance seminar at a disco. Pilatus said, "Something clicked between us." His manner now enthusiastic as he began tracing the events that led to his current success. He explains that they not only connected on a friends level, but on an identity level as well, saying they both grew up in foreign cities. Fab, who was born in the Caribbean islands of Guadeloupe and raised in Paris, is the quiet one of the pair. Apparently though, it's not because he's shy. Reportedly, Fab shies away from interviews because his English is limited. Now remember, that's noted in this article at the time. So even at their success, people knew that he didn't speak full English, but he was also singing in full English, so I don't really know how that worked. Now, this would prove to be one of the main giveaways of Frank Farian's Milli Vanilli scheme. See, the song Girl You Know It's True was sang by American singers, and Fab Morvan wasn't fluent in English. The duo would start by recording an album album with a small label in Germany under the name Empire Bazaar in 1987, but would only sell a few thousand copies. While they were waiting on their big pop star breakthrough, they began working as catalog models to make ends meet. Their pop ambition was still going strong, as Rob would secure a spot as a guitarist for Eurovision that same year. Rob and Fab would make friends with musicians in the area who were always doing studio sessions with Frank Farian, and it wouldn't take long for all the musicians to get in the studio and start playing together. They had so much fun together that they got a band together just to perform at the Bavarian Carnival. It's believed that this is where Frank Farian first saw Rob and Fab perform, and he was mesmerized by their high energy. Frank knew they had star quality, and he hatched a plan for Rob and Fab to front his new project. Frank called Rob and Fab over to his studio where he would make them the proposition of a lifetime. With state-of-the-art equipment staring them dead in the face and platinum records lining the walls, Rob and Fab finally felt like they were where they belonged. Frank Farian played them the final version of Girl You Know It's True with all those studio session singers, and Rob and Fab assumed that that was the demo for the final version they would be recording. However, with no legal counsel and photos of Stevie Wonder recording I Just Called to Say I Love You 1 year prior in the very studio they were sitting in, hanging up on the walls, Rob and Fab quickly accepted Frank Farian's 3-album deal and $4,000 advance with little to no questions. Frank Farian had officially sealed Rob and Fab's fate with the production deal on the spot, which was a less than desirable deal. See, Frank wrote a lot of the songs and also produced and owned the masters and publishing. Rob and Fab would be given a percentage of the earnings once the music was released. This was a small price to pay for what Rob and Fab truly wanted more than anything: fame. Expecting to be recording their new album soon, Rob and Fab immediately took all of the $4,000 and brought hair extensions and new wardrobes. When Frank called them back to the studio, Rob and Fab were under the impression it was to record their new single they had heard the demo of prior. However, when they got to the studio, Frank informed them that they would not be recording anything, and that the vocals were already recorded. All that Rob and Fab would need to do would be the promotional work for the song that the studio session singers had already sang. It wasn't even their song. Rob and Fab would immediately decline and said they wanted no part of this charade, as they were real musicians. But Frank would quip back, saying they had already committed to doing this, and they were contracted for 3 albums. But if they wanted to get out of their contract, all they would need to do is pay back their $4,000 advance. But unfortunately for Rob and Fab, they had already spent it. With no one advising them, they were all alone and scared of Frank Farian. They didn't have enough money to pay Frank back, thus they agreed to promote the project till they paid back their advance. Now, this contract doesn't seem upfront at all. Sadly, if they had actually had proper legal counsel, they probably would have never had to deal with this farce. But nonetheless, on November 24th, 1988, Hamza, a German subsidiary of BMG, would release Girl You Know It's True by Rob and Fab, now going by the group name Milli Vanilli. The song soared to the top of the German charts and was an absolute smash hit in Germany. Now, up until this point, the original singers of the song, Charles Brad and the Rocco Twins, had been completely left in the dark about Rob and Fab being the faces of the project. And with Rob and Fab being worldwide celebrities, Frank counting his coins, and Brad already being an established musician, the only person upset and taken by complete surprise was Charles Shaw. The last thing he expected from that $6,000 recording session was a smash hit record. All of the singers didn't even know that the song was going to be used as is, and just started hearing it booming from their radios with no real warning. Charles, being the upset one of the group, immediately threatened to go public with the story, but Frank wrote him off and hired a new artist to record Milli Vanilli's raps for the rest of the album, named John Davis. So if you got that, that means Girl You Know It's True has actually a different rapper than all the other songs on that album. Which I guess, like, y'all, Brittany Jean, we still don't even know who's singing on each of those tracks. So I guess I'm not one to talk. I guess people just don't know, but that just seems like something people would catch. Charles would quietly back off for the time being, and Frank would attempt to patent down the hatches, making certain the original singers never met Rob and Fab, and reminded them all of their contracts included non-disclosure agreements. Now, where were Rob and Fab during all of this? Well, with the success of Girl You Know It's True, their careers were skyrocketing. But Frank was fronting them their living expenses to be paid back, so they weren't getting any closer to paying off their ever-evolving advances. This was the cycle that would keep Frank profiting and Rob and Fab working their asses off. They needed basic living expenses, but that forced them to promote a farce they never wanted a part in the first place. So why did they go along with this? They were selling out arenas every night and they could have paid back their advance at this point, maybe, but this was also their dream. It hadn't even been a year yet since that fateful meeting with Frank Farian, and they were on a rocket ship going higher and higher. Getting out of the deal was becoming less of a priority. They were now touring the world, lip-syncing to other people's voices and putting on a show. Now, Rob and Fab begged that Frank let them use some of their own vocals on their next album, but Frank refused. They would continually go along with the charade and caught the attention of another Bertelmans Group subsidiary, this time a label who wanted to sign Milli Vanilli directly and rework their first European project titled All or Nothing into the American smash hit album Girl You Know It's True. Now, nearly 10 vocalists are credited on the album All or Nothing, none of which are Rob or Fab. Only their photos appear on the cover, but this new label rework would go as far as to credit Rob and Fab as the vocalists of the album, and then just go on and release the record. This is when Girl You Know It's True would reach #2 in the United States, and Baby Don't Forget My Number would hit #1 on Billboard. This was major for Milli Vanilli, as they were now worldwide sensations. One day, while touring at a theme park in Connecticut, MTV was doing a live series special with Milli Vanilli. However, when they opened up with Girl You Know It's True, the hard drive would get stuck and repeat the lines, "Girl you know it's, girl you know it's, girl you know it's."
I wanted to die. It stopped. Girl, you know it's, girl, you know it's, girl. 80,000 people. Girl, you know it's, girl, you know. You know, I couldn't repeat it 15 times. Girl, it got obvious. So I stopped, I panicked, I ran off stage. Julie Brown, who used to work for MTV, ran after me. I didn't want to go back to stage. I had enough. 80,000 people waiting. I said, I have enough. I quit.
Rob recalled, "I knew right then and there it was the beginning of the end for Milli Vanilli. When my voice got stuck in the computer and it just kept repeating and repeating, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I just ran off the stage." Now, the audience didn't seem to particularly notice, at home or in person, but journalists most certainly did. See, Rob and Fab had already had suspicions swirling around about them backstage in the industry, as they had thick European accents, but sang in a perfect American accent. Not to mention, the LA Times reported that Fab declined to interview due to his lack of English. Downtown Julie Brown, a host on MTV, actually ran after Rob and convinced him to finish the rest of the show in Connecticut. She had to yell and curse them out, but they got back up there and things went off without a hitch. Weeks and weeks would go by with no coverage of the incident. They would set out on tour and even release their fourth single, Blame It on the Rain, and that would go #1 as well. So they're on a rocket ship of success, all while their empire is crumbling locally and no one's really seeing because the internet doesn't exist yet. Now, Charles Shaw, the rapper on Milli Vanilli's hit single, would run to New York Newsweek and openly expose Milli Vanilli. But Frank Farian would reportedly pay Charles over $150,000 for a retraction and his continued silence. Which I don't really know. I guess a retraction is like, I guess they said they lied or whatever, or they like are taking it back, but does that really do anything? Comment below if you think a retraction really does anything at all. Now, like I said, because the internet was still obviously not around, the news did not spread. And Frank Farian had successfully damage controlled his way out of the Milli Vanilli lie being exposed. But the lie was only getting more convoluted and complex as time went on. See, the situation would completely escalate when Milli Vanilli would win a Grammy Award from the Recording Academy for Best New Artist. A duo Frank Farian put as a front for the actual Milli Vanilli won a Grammy. Just to put that into perspective, I think they had as many Grammys as Britney Spears has, so that's like a pretty big deal. This put Milli Vanilli and specifically Rob on a complete life high. When being interviewed by Time magazine, Rob would state, "Musically, we are more talented than Paul McCartney. Mick Jagger, his lines are not clear. He don't know how he should produce a sound. I'm the new modern rock and roll. I'm the new Elvis." Fab would later state that this was a misquote, but still, like, yikes. It seems as though the entire image and sound had gotten to Rob. Now, this caused for a string of bad press about the group, and Milli Vanilli was quickly fading into the background, but not without various late night shows getting their digs in about the two vocalists. Things were really, really bad, and all of their friends seemingly jumped ship.
Here we go, the category tonight, top 10 new jobs for Milli Vanilli. Open law firm of Jacoby Myers, Milli Vanilli. Number 9, camp counselors in Father Flanagan's Pretty Boys Town. Number 8, Jamaican pickpockets in American Express commercial. Number 7, trying to sell Ben & Jerry's on idea for Milli Vanilla. Number 6, cartoon pals to Chili Willy. Number 5, professional objects of scorn and ridicule for years to come. Number 4, fact checkers at 2020 in the buckwheat division. Number 3, even newer kids on the block. Number 2, extremely groovy fry cooks. And the number 1 new job for Milli Vanilli, who cares, just as long as we don't hear from them ever again.
But this backlash was nothing compared to what Frank Farian was about to do and the trigger that he was about to pull. With increasing questions as to who actually sings their songs, and with the growing public pressure, along with the fact that Rob and Fab were insisting on singing the next album themselves, Frank Farian decided to throw them to the wolves and fire them. According to a press release from the Washington Post, Farian said he was forced to go public when the two men, who do an energetic but sloppy lip sync performance in concerts, informed him earlier this month they wanted to sing on their sequel album. "I said, no, I don't go for that. Sure, they have a voice, but that's not really what I want to use on my records." Though he refused to say who had actually done the singing, Farian said the album's title song was already recorded when the dynamic duo first showed up at his studio. Farian said the album's title song was already recorded when the dynamic duo first showed up at his studio. Frank saying, "It suddenly clicked in my mind and it was kind of evident I had the music. They were the people who wanted to perform outside. And I said, hey, let's put that together and make a great record out of it." Milli Vanilli was being exposed as a farce. This news hit fast this time. Milli Vanilli's American label wanted nothing to do with them, and according to BMG employees, they immediately took down their platinum plaques the day the news broke. They were dead to the group of people that had built them up for nearly 2 years at that point, and the American public would have a field day. Rob and Fab scrambled to put together a press conference that was high-spirited at best and sloppy at worst. The main point of contention that Rob and Fab seemed to perceive was that they were unable to sing, when it seems that the American public were actually just more upset about being so publicly deceived. Which is nothing today, I mean, everyone lip syncs, but I will say, like, this was a big, like, this is not someone singing with their own voice or lip syncing to their own voice. This is an entirely different artist backing a different image. Now, Rob and Fab would sing their hearts out in a studio as soon as the news broke, trying to convince everyone at the press conference with a video of them singing.
Yes, you know it's true.
Your sweet, sweet voice was ringing my ear. Stimulates my sense, girl, when you are near. And with your positive emotional love, making it joy. Listening to us, it's like a girl and a boy.
Later on, when they were to receive the Grammy, again, we had been working on their voices and they were improving steadily. And they already started off quite well. They wanted to sing that night live again. They were told, no, you're not to sing tonight. The reason I know is that I was standing there. But I do know that these men are able to do what was required of them to make that record, and they were told not to, and that's it.
They would even sing at the press conference itself, but to no avail. Their voices were good, but not the same as what they had been portraying for an entire album cycle at this point. At this press conference, they offered up their Grammys in a tongue-in-cheek way.
we give this Grammy back now because we give this Grammy back now to the Record Academy, and we recommend our buddies who did the real voices, who got seduced like us in Germany. Brad Howell and Sean Davis are the real singers, and I think they should get this Grammy.
But the Academy took this very seriously, and Milli Vanilli became the first artist in history to have their Grammy rescinded. This press run would be one of the biggest scandals in modern music history. Newspapers printed with the faces of Rob and Fab saying, "We sold our souls to the devil," would be distributed throughout the United States. Rob and Fab would claim that Frank Farian refused to allow them to sing on their own songs. But Frank Farian holds that he did nothing wrong by the duo, and that the studio singers and Milli Vanilli all made millions. According to Frank, the only person wanting more was Rob. Now remember, we are in the 90s, and numerous lawsuits would develop over the situation, and not the kind that I was expecting. See, previous fans of Milli Vanilli were suing their American label and distributor for a multitude of reasons, all stemming from the deception of Milli Vanilli. However, instead of addressing the nearly 30 lawsuits that resulted because of this, the record label offered a public settlement, ranging anywhere from $1 to $3 total.
Special announcement. Did you purchase or receive by gift before November 27, 1990, a Milli Vanilli recording, a ticket to a concert at which Milli Vanilli performed, or Milli Vanilli merchandise? If so, listen carefully to this important message about a pending Milli Vanilli lawsuit that may affect your rights. If you fall into any of these three categories, you are a member of a proposed class in an action in the Circuit Court of Cook County, Chicago, Illinois. A tentative settlement has been reached in this action, which is subject to court approval, and which may entitle you to a cash rebate.
And 10 million people were eligible, but only 100,000 applied. Rob and Fab's bank accounts were being drained by legal fees, and any fortune that they had was quickly leaving them. With all the news swirling around Milli Vanilli, Frank Farian's interests were piqued once again. However, this time not for Rob and Fab, but for the original singers of Milli Vanilli. He would release a project under the title The Real Milli Vanilli, Moment of Truth, which prominently featured a picture of the new group, which had two of the original faces from the first album, Brad Howell and John Davis, but also featured a bunch of new people, including the new lead singer, Ray Horton, who also apparently didn't provide any vocals to the new album either. So Frank Farian basically thought the public would just accept this new group again, and it really reminds me of Jenny and Sumit from 90 Day Fiancé, like how he catfished her and then actually continued being with her after he revealed himself. Well, the same couldn't be said for Milli Vanilli. This was not the real Milli Vanilli in the slightest. The real Milli Vanilli was made up of the cast of the recording of Girl You Know It's True. Now, what about Rob and Fab? In the wake of the lip-syncing scandal in 1992, they moved to LA, got new management, and got signed by a record label called Taj Records. They would work on an album called Rob and Fab, and would even promote their lead single, We Can Get It On the Arsenio Hall show. Even though the single wasn't received as well as the work they put out as Milli Vanilli, they did satisfy their fan base, and would most likely have sold more than just 2,000 copies, had their record label not been going bankrupt. And the album was only being distributed in the United States, where in 1993, they were still considered a laughingstock. Over the next few years, Rob and Fab would slowly stop speaking to each other, as after all the hype died down and the touring stopped, Fab was still able to put down the substances they had gotten into over the course of their rise. But Rob wasn't so lucky. After 2 years of drifting, Taj Records would eventually shut its doors for good, and Rob and Fab would grow estranged.
Ever since it was revealed that pop singers Milli Vanilli did not really sing on some of their recordings, things have been going south fast for the duo. First, they lost their Grammy, and now something much worse has happened. Nancy Glass is here with our story. Nancy.
Bill, Milli Vanilli didn't just give up their Grammy and slink off into the sunset. For the past year, they have told people they were working with a voice coach and planning a comeback. They said they would prove that they really can sing. Well, maybe that was all for show, because over the weekend, one member attempted suicide.
Recently, it seemed that Milli Vanilli weren't losing sleep over their lip-syncing scandal. They even parodied themselves in this commercial for Carefree Gum.
How long? Till these guys sing for themselves.
But over the weekend, one half of the duo, 27-year-old Rob Pilatus, seemed to be in anything but a lighthearted mood. It was at this hotel in Los Angeles early Saturday morning that police found him ready to take his life.
He was hanging on by his hands on this railway here. I yelled up to him, and I told him no, he didn't want to do this.
At 4:55 a.m., Rob Pilatus made a call to the offices of the Los Angeles Times to have a reporter take down his last words. Receptionist Jerry Wing answered the phone.
I could tell by his voice this man was no shape at all. And I went to question him, and he said, "Oh, please." He said, "Just put me through. This is an emergency." So
an editor from the paper contacted local deputies who quickly arrived on the scene and found him on the balcony of room 910 of the Le Mondrian Hotel on Sunset Boulevard, drugged, bleeding, and threatening to jump 120 feet to his death.
We then formulated a plan where we could gain entry into room 909 next door. And once we were set in position in room 909, our station desk telephoned Mr. Pilatus' room, and as Mr. Pilatus left the balcony to answer the telephone, we then walked across the balcony into the room and detained him.
Pilatus was taken to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and placed under 24-hour observation. Rob Pilatus is the Milli Vanilli member who seemed to have the most problems after he was labeled as a fraud and stripped of his Grammy Award. A month after the scandal was revealed, he was arrested and investigated for sexual battery.
You didn't do it.
What?
You were charged with sexual battery.
Really?
But he was never charged, and he and his Milli Vanilli partner, Fab Morvan, were trying to start over. But perhaps the pressures of being deserted by the music industry and his fans were just too much to bear.
Girl, you know it's true.
Rob Pilatus told the LA Times that he was constantly approached by former fans who were angry that they had been duped. And even tougher for him was that his family back in Germany was getting harassed as well.
However, just 4 years later, in 1997, VH1 would rip the group out of obscurity for the premiere episode of VH1's Behind the Music. This caused a major resurgence for the group, and Frank Farian did the impossible. He offered to produce one last album for the duo to hopefully help them recover some of the fame they'd left back in 1991. However, this time it would be their own voices. This was all Rob and Fab ever wanted, and this was the first time Rob and Fab would hit the studio with Frank to record their new single, Back and in Attack. However, during the album's recording, Rob had still not recovered from 1991. While Fab was figuring his life out for the past 4 years, Rob's use had been spiraling out of control, and he committed multiple crimes while they were trying to record the album. He was sentenced to 6 months in rehabilitation and 3 months in jail. This, however, didn't stop the duo from finishing the album with Frank, though it's largely thought that Fab did a majority of the vocals on the project, since Rob just wasn't even around. Finally, the dream they'd had nearly a decade earlier of Frank Farian producing their voices was coming true. The only thing left to do was to promote the new project. The album was entirely done and ready for the world to hear. However, on the night before the album's promotional tour, in a hotel room in Frankfurt, Germany, Rob Pilatus was found dead, having suspectedly overdosed. The comeback album would never be released and remains unheard to this day. Fab would go on to start a solo career in music, releasing an album and even teased a Milli Vanilli reunion with one of the original singers from the group in 2015, but that would never come to fruition. The story of Milli Vanilli is a heartbreaking one. Two men promised fame, riches, and a career were turned into farces in front of the entire world. And I guess it just goes to show, in the wise words of Nicole Scherzinger, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it.